Hi, I'm Kendall.
And I'm Philip.
And we are
the Digital Language Nomads.
We are coming to you from Tbilisi, Georgia.
Yeah.
So we came here about 5 weeks ago, and we had no expectations. We had never really heard much about this country, and we really have grown fond of this beautiful land.
I think we are loving it here.
We are loving it here. And we have been able to really travel throughout the entire country. We have not stayed in one area. We've traveled around. One of the things that you notice here in Georgia is there are tons of monasteries, over 252 monasteries.
It's really the land of monasteries, isn't it?
Yeah, it is the land of monasteries. But so we went to 3 that we really enjoyed and really got to explore. The first one was St. Nino's, and St. Nino's is a very important saint here in Georgia.
Yeah.
It is the saint of Georgia. And the grounds were just...
It was spectacular, and it dates back to about 900 AD.
Yeah.
And it really, it's just spectacular. Beautifully done, beautiful grounds, and in such a serene location. It was stunning.
Yeah, it was. And what was another one of the monasteries we went to?
Javari's monastery was another one.
Yeah.
And that was also beautiful.
So that sits on the top of a hill. That is, you can see it from all over as you're driving up to it. When we got there, we noticed that there was a small church right next to the larger monastery. And we found out that that's actually how it started in the 3rd century. And just really the architect in that monastery was...
Right, and most of the churches here in Georgia are all similarly shaped, have we noticed, right?
Yes, we have.
And that's because there is a certain architecture to it that I think was originally started by David the Builder.
Yes.
And they've pretty much modeled all their churches after that. So that's kind of an interesting fact. And then, of course, we also visited the Tbilisi Monastery.
Yes, yeah. Yes. Tell us a little bit about that.
Again, it was just an interesting monastery. I forget exactly where it was. I gotta tell you one thing, the names here are really a little difficult to remember. We actually have a little cheat sheet right here in front of us to kind of help us out because it is tough, But I hope everybody forgives us for that because we just can't do it any better than that. But
absolutely.
Really, yeah.
Absolutely.
For example, one of the things we went to was Upstlike, which is a cave town near the city of Gori, which is actually the birthplace of Stalin. Kind of an interesting note.
And we even stopped in Gori.
Yeah, we did.
And we actually explored that town. It was really great. We actually even got a ticket there because we stopped along a bridge.
Yeah, we stopped on a bridge. Apparently, that's a big no-no. Don't stop on a bridge because that's a 10 lari ticket.
Yeah, don't do that here in Georgia. But anyway, going back to that cave town that Philip was talking about, that town is built like on a very large rock, with tons of caves within it.
It's like a natural fort.
It is a natural fort.
So that was built again in, I believe, about 900 AD is when they started building there. Maybe even a little bit before that, but either way, it was built as a natural fort because it is high up on this rock, and this rock itself really is like a fortress. And it's got caves everywhere, and then that dates back, and it's just amazing.
We had such a great time just going through the caves. It was really a fun day. Then we went to the canyon.
Tbilisi Canyon.
The Tbilisi Canyon.
Yeah.
Wow. If you guys come here, you must make that a stop.
Yeah.
That canyon, the water, the way it roars, the river that you get to walk, the paths that
again,
you get
so
to walk.
serene to be walking through there. So serene. Everything is really lush and green because the waterfalls are misting the whole place. So it's got moss growing everywhere. It's really just a delicious place to visit, I thought.
And we even got onto a boat and we did some paddling and we really got to explore it firsthand. It definitely put it on your bucket list if you come here to Georgia.
That's another must-visit place. Yeah.
And then we went to another cave.
Yes, that was. I'm going to have to just look here for a second. What cave was that actually? Prometheus cave. That was discovered in 1984, I believe. So it's kind of a new discovery.
It's about a 25.
And it's a huge cave, and actually they haven't actually totally explored the entire cave, but it's so far they know it's at least 25 kilometers large, wide, and just stretches all over. It's made by an underground river, but as a tourist, with a tour, you can actually explore about 1.5 kilometers of it, and it is absolutely stunning. It's got these huge chambers that have to,
stalagmites.
But they've got to be at least 200-300 feet high. They're just these enormous chambers that are just so impressive. You definitely don't get any claustrophobia there because it's really a big cave, and it's got just the most beautiful colors. Really, it's just amazing. And I'm colorblind, so it's got to say something that.
Yeah. So then we decided to take a 4-day trip up into the mountains, into Mestia and Ushguli.
Yes.
We actually stayed in Mestia and we took 1 day up to Ushguli. Mestia is a lovely, lovely town.
Yeah.
We actually really enjoyed the music there. We had the opportunity to go to a children's play.
Yeah, that's right.
And got to see how that transposed here in Georgia. One of the things that we loved was that the parents and children really interacted with the play. It was really wonderful. Of course, the language here in Georgia is so different than any of the languages we speak. At times we're a little bit lost with the language, but you just can really get the feel of people. You don't have to understand every word as you travel.
Right.
So tell us a little bit about Ushguli.
Now that is a small town. It's one of the highest continuously inhabited settlements here in Europe, but to get there, that's quite a challenge. From Mestia, it quickly turns into a dirt road, and it follows this.
It was about an hour and a half.
Oh, at least.
Yeah.
And it's an hour and a half to cover about 40 kilometers. So you're going about 25 kilometers on average an hour. It's
at times we had
rocks on the road.
We had
there's no guardrail
going on. There's no guardrail. But when you turn the corner and you get to Ushguli, you start to see the towers. The towers were mainly to protect Queen Mara. Those towers are fascinating. They're also in Mestia, by the way.
Yeah, the whole region there really has these towers that were built starting, I think, in about 1200 AD is what they date from.
Yeah.
And these towers are probably about 100 feet high or so, and they have these
chambers where they can, at the top, that they can watch out for danger coming, and at the bottom they have their own home.
Right. And then they use crossbows from up in the tower to shoot any enemies down.
Or they used to.
Well, yeah, they don't do that anymore. No worries. None of that anymore. But they used to shoot with crossbows, and I guess these crossbows were really amazing too because they were accurate to 2 kilometers. So, they were able to pick people off at quite a distance. So so this area actually was never conquered by anybody else, and that's one of the reasons that it never was conquered, because first of all it's high up, and second they were well defended, and these mountains are just spectacular.
We got to take a really nice long hike, but I want to talk to you about three places that we actually got to stop. One of them was a 12th century church that has never been destroyed, and it is just spectacular. It's a very small church there.
Yeah.
It is beautiful. Then we were lucky enough to meet a lady who was in her 80
yes.
80 year old.
And they had a little museum there.
She had a little museum.
Yeah, and we got to see some of the museum artifacts there, just how they lived and how they cooked over there, and how they would live in the winter versus how they would live in the summer.
Yeah.
And some of the way they dressed, and of course how they made music.
And she's
how
the
they
only
made their
one.
food.
Yeah, and she's the only one that could play that
that
special
old,
instrument.
I forget the name of it.
I don't remember.
Sorry again.
Again, it's a really difficult name, but. What I did want to tell you about it, it was fascinating how the animals would live inside the house, because this is a really high mountain area, and they would keep
in the winter,
and they would keep the people warm. That was it was wonderful. She was so sweet. The museum was closed when we got there. We kind of talked to her, and she opened it up for us. And it was it's fascinating. By the way, there'll be a whole video about that
Ushkuli
and Mestia, and there will be a video about the museum. She let me do a whole video in there, so that was really, really
right. And you mentioned about animals. Well, guess what? We have seen lots of animals here, because cows, pigs, sheep are all over the road. If you drive here in Georgia, you better be careful, because they are truly on every road. Even on highways, you'll see sheep along it. So it's always possible that you might have to do what they call a Georgian slalom, which is driving around the cows, because they will stand in the middle of the road. Now, good thing is they pretty much just stand there. They don't move a whole lot, so they're just kind of standing there looking at you like, what are you up to?
Yeah.
But
unless it's a pig.
Yeah, I guess pigs.
So you got to be really careful with the pigs.
Pigs are a little unpredictable. Apparently, they move much faster, and they could all of a sudden jump out from some place. But that is something that you should be aware of, and it's all open range basically is what it comes down to. So that was pretty interesting. And then talking about the animals, now what about the food here?
That's what I was going to say.
Oh, okay.
That's been our favorite. We never realized how much we were going to love Georgian food. Wow.
And it's so different, the food here.
It is.
It is just not, you can't say, oh, it's like Italian or it's like Turkish food. No, it is really its own cuisine. And and of course they got a lot of interesting names for all this food. They got, for example, something called kinkali.
And those are these dumplings. And but I'm vegetarian, so I'm always concerned when I travel, is there going to be options for me? This country has so many options for vegetarians, and on top of it, I have egg allergies, and they have so many options for me to eat here. So the kinkali that we were talking about are these big dumplings. Generally, they're filled with meat, and there's a specific way you eat these kimkalis. They're stuffed with this meat. There's full of broth. So when you take your first bite, you have to take a bite
and suck out the juice.
All the juice.
It is super good. I mean, just super good.
Yeah.
And by the way, all the foods we're talking about, we also have a little video coming up for that.
Yeah, cooking and foods and
that shows that. So if you're interested in that, be sure to check out that video as well.
Yeah. And the kinkali, because of course he's a carnivore, he eats meat. I was able to enjoy this mushroom one that has the same concept with the delicious broth and juice, and then they have a mashed potato one that is
a cheese
to
one.
die for, and then they have a cheese one.
But that is just a kinkali.
That's just a kinkali. Then we have
hachapuri.
Hachapuri. Oh, this is a homemade bread. It can be filled with it is filled with cheese. Sometimes it has an egg on top and extra cheese on top, but that
too is just something special, really different and delicious. And their cheese here is so yummy too. So
good. Then there's of course the puri bread. Now that is at every bakery. You can buy it anywhere.
Small little bakeries are everywhere.
And this puri bread is kind of made like naan. It's a big stove, and they just stick it to the side of the wall, and it is made all day long. So you never buy bread early in the morning for later at night. No. You always go pick it up last thing right before you have dinner.
So you get a nice warm fresh bread. It's
That's
just
fantastic.
Really tops.
And then there's the Lobiani beans. Those
Lobiani.
are Lobiani. Thank you, Lobiani beans. Those are in a pottery dish. They're usually served.
A clay pot, like a clay pot, and it's.
It's so good. I just
they put some
even
herbs on it, onions, herbs.
And then on top they cover it with this cornbread.
Oh yeah.
Oh, you guys, the cornbread is so good here.
So yummy.
And then
I'm getting hungry right now.
I am too. How about that lamb? That lamb dish.
Oh, the chakapuli?
No, it's chapuli, right?
Oh, kabduli.
Yeah.
Kabdali?
No, right here.
Oh, that's a chakapuli.
Chakapuli. Okay, the chakapuli is a stew of lamb and potatoes, and like I said, I'm vegetarian, but the broth was so good, and we had some delicious, Georgian bread, so I had to soak some.
Super good.
It was phenomenal.
I actually thought you were talking about the kubdali, which is the Mestia version of the khachapuri.
Yes.
Which is, instead of having cheese on the inside, it has meat on the inside.
Yeah.
And we had that too when we were in Mestia. So, it's just been one thing after another. It's been so good.
And they have these bean-filled pastries. I can't remember the name of it, but those were to die for. And then they have what they call the Georgian Snicker.
Yeah.
And you see it hanging all over town. And when I first saw it, I thought it was some kind of sausage, but it actually is a sweet paste that goes outside of walnuts.
Yeah.
Now here in Georgia, you're going to see groves of different nuts, from
walnuts, pecans.
I have never eaten such delicious nuts in my life. So in other words, I kind of need to go on a diet once I leave Georgia. Sadly, we're headed to Italy, which will be really hard to watch my weight there too, because I'm a pizza goer. But there's one more thing I want to share to you.
Well, I want to talk about the wine still.
That's what I want to share about. The wine in Chacha.
And that the wine culture here goes back 8,000 years. Okay, so they've been making wine here for 8,000 years. It's probably the oldest culture in the world that makes wine. And they do it in a really special way, because they don't just have them in these wooden vats that, how they do it maybe in France or in Spain. No, these urns, these clay pots. They're about 3-4 feet high. They put them in the ground, and then that's where they make their wine. They ferment the wine in these clay pots in the ground, where it has a consistent temperature. I guess they say it's about 14 degrees Celsius, and that creates just a tremendously delicious wine.
Yeah. And
it's wine. Wine is everywhere. This is really a wine country.
This is a wine country.
And that was maybe a little unknown fact.
For us, it was.
For sure.
One of the things that we absolutely love is how families sit around a table. So we have had the opportunity to be invited to several people's homes and truly experience firsthand that experience. And the first thing you notice is the table is covered with food, with all these dishes and many more that we haven't mentioned. And then there's, of course, the red wine, the white wine, and the cha-cha. And there's always at the table what they call a toastmaster. The toastmaster is the person that heads all the toasts during the meal, during the supra is usually, and supra is usually when they're celebrating something. When we were there, they were celebrating that we were there with them. So they considered it a supra. And the toastmaster usually begins with peace and health, and then the toasts go on all through the
whole entire meal, and even after the meal too. It's one toast after another.
But what's beautiful here, it's not the point of getting intoxicated. The point is celebrating with the people while we are enjoying the meal, because the entire time we're enjoying food, we're laughing, we're talking, and even though there was a language barrier, you could hardly notice it. I mean, I always felt so engaged.
I felt so welcomed, and just it's been so nice. It's really beautiful.
And just a little tidbit about their wine is, once you have passed and you are buried, they actually have a table right next to the grave. and they will come and visit you, and they will bring wine, and the very first thing they do before they take a sip is they pour a little bit on the grave so you can enjoy wine all together. So this,
right, you can enjoy your wine in heaven, because that's how important the wine is in this culture.
Yeah. And you know what's lovely is how this culture is all about gatherings and being together with families. And we just, today we're in Tbilisi, and in Tbilisi there's wonderful things. There's the Georgian mother.
The mother of Georgia.
The mother of Georgia. You'll see a large statue of hers. There's also a gondola that you can go up to.
That goes up to the mother of Georgia.
Yeah, that goes up to the mother of Georgia, and also the botanical gardens. There is waterfalls around here in Tbilisi. There's a big river that runs right within the city. There's some boat rides.
It's just so much to do.
I can't emphasize how much we loved it here, to the point that we're actually considering coming back, even this year maybe.
Yeah.
It's just been phenomenal. So I don't know if it's in your radar to come to Georgia, but if it's not, it really should be. So for now, adios.
Tot ziens.
And we'll see you in Italy.
All right.